Welcome to hour number 2 on a Monday with hashtag Daily K's host, Peter Big. Tired of just scratching the surface of Korea? Want to get deep in the weeds?
We unpack everything about Korea through its history on
Now and Then
with David.
It is a Monday morning. That means Mr. Tizard is in the studio. Actually, for the new autumn season, though, this is the first time we're seeing your lovely face on the video stream. Mask off and everything. I love your shirt, by the way, David. And I did see some of your social media photos. You got to get back to the UK for a little while.
I did.
It looked delightful.
It was very delightful, yes. It was marvellous. It was splendid. It was absolutely spiffing, sir.
Does it tempt you to go back, like, permanently? Any thoughts cross your mind?
You know what? I love the skies. I love the rolling hills. I love the weather. I love the English pubs. I love my family. There's something that you see in England that there's two observations, very different from Korea. The first one is that in England, people will talk to you in the street. Yeah. Or just you're queuing up to buy something, and we had these old £20 notes that are not legal tender anymore.
Okay.
And so it was the last week, and we were there, we were using this money, and the person would always say, you need to change this by the end of the week. And then someone down the queue would always put in, you can go to the bank and do that, mate. And then another person would say, yes, I did that. It was very noisy.
Yeah.
But in Korea, you don't find people talking to each other, people they don't know, waiting for an elevator, in a coffee shop. Yeah. Do you see what I mean by that? Just that level of interaction amongst the public or strangers.
Yeah, and my mum, having come from Britain, and we did this all over the weekend because we went away together, she always will talk to strangers, right? She'll make Koreans talk to her.
Yeah, I do that
She'll
too.
say, 좋은 하루 되세요 to everyone in the elevator. And you know, she talked about it yesterday. Really weird coincidence you bring this up. She's like, if you say that, even the most stony-faced person will instantly be like, oh, yeah, I can talk to you. And they'll be really nice and lovely.
Yeah.
I think if you try it in Korea, it can work. But you're right. The given default is just don't talk to anybody.
It's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. There is a difference. And I do notice that in Korea that silence is deafening sometimes. It's really loud.
Yes.
The other thing I noticed, and this is a little bit weirder, but in England, I see a lot of big people. Like, they're getting really large, even to the extent where, like, you can see the belly coming out the bottom of the T-shirt.
Yes.
And you're like, that wouldn't fly in Korea. You just don't see that. In Korea, I feel a great pressure to, sort of be thin. I can see Denny through the window there. He's always doing his workouts and things like that, looking flex. But it's very different, the appearance of people.
Yeah, I think it might be compounded by the fact you've lived in Korea for a long time now. I notice it way more going back to the UK, but it also could be the UK's getting bigger and bigger, it seems like. European-wise, I think we're one of the fattest countries out there. And appearance is one thing, but health is the most important thing, right? That's not good for you.
No, it's not.
No,
it's not.
Come on, get up.
Anyway, I did enjoy my time back, and it's good to be here on the season. I'm sorry that you can't see my face, but it's good to be back with the crew.
No, everyone is happy to see you. Today's topic I've previewed is a sport in Korea. It's very popular. We're not talking about football. I think there's a ban on football talk today.
We've talked about football.
We've got it out of the way.
We've done it all.
Yes.
Yeah. Congratulations.
So what is today's topic?
Today's topic is 야구 or baseball. Now, obviously, this is something very close to both Peter and I's heart.
We love baseball, man.
But baseball is really big in Korea. So we thought we'd talk about baseball, and there's a reason, because the season has just ended. They're just about to go into the KBO playoffs. That starts October the 12th. And so it's really heating up here in Korea. So I thought this was a perfect time to introduce some of our listeners to baseball in Korea. To do that, I'm going to start with a question. I hope our PD doesn't show this photo on there.
Let's take it off. Okay.
Yeah. Let's start with a question for the listeners. Which group released an album in which the title track was inspired by the sport of baseball?
Oh.
Which K-pop group released an an album in which the title track was inspired by the sport of baseball. Even the music video featured it. So
and
answers on a postcard or answers on a however you do it.
Yes, there have been a few baseball tracks in the past. So an extra hint would be, in the video, they're all dressed in baseball attire. It's from 2021 as well, to narrow it down. Because I remember a 17-track called Home Run, which I think was maybe loosely based on baseball as well.
Sounds like it.
It does sound like it,
you're
doesn't
just
it?
trying to get back for dinner.
Get home. So give us your guesses for that. We can play that as a kind of quiz game until the end of today's session with David. He'll reveal the answer later on. And you said tongue-in-cheek, me and Pete are really into this sport because we didn't grow up with baseball at all. I mean, we have a similar game, Rounders, but it's not commercial. No. There's not professional leagues or anything. And the American sports system is very different to the European or maybe just the British. Like even saying postseason playoffs, we do have playoffs in a certain league in football, but it's not the big thing there, right? So that is kind of how Korea has followed the States in a way.
Absolutely. And there are obvious historical reasons, cultural reasons why Korea has followed the States. And that's why they've got baseball, just like it is in Japan and other parts of what is Cuba as well, is really big. Now, in South Korea, in the KBO, this is the professional league here, there's 10 professional teams. Season runs from March to October. Yeah. And, unlike football where we're waiting for the weekend or something to watch it, there's basically games on every day.
Yeah, in the evening time, right?
They're always on.
You really do. If you're a baseball fan, I'm wondering, how much do you watch? Because as a football fan, like you last season, you watched the majority of games, I'd like to say, of Liverpool, right?
Basically every game.
Yeah. If you had to do that as a baseball fan, I think you wouldn't be able to work like full time, or you'd be watching like maybe 3 hours a night every day. That's a big drain on time. So I'm curious, like even the passionate baseball fans, do they watch all the games like right to the end? Because that would be their whole social lives, I'm assuming.
I think that's the point of it for some people.
Maybe it is.
There are 10 teams in Korean Baseball League, and so I said it runs from March to October. On October the 12th, so in 2 days, the playoffs are going to begin, and this is the wild card series. I'll explain something of that in a minute. And by November the 8th, we'll know the champions of 2022. There's something, the SSG Landers, right? This is the SSG Landers. This season, in the regular season, from the first to the end, they were top.
Okay.
They achieved this amazing feat. Normally, the leader fluctuates a little bit.
From the very beginning to the end?
From the beginning to the end.
Oh, my
SSG
goodness.
Landers, there they are on the screen. They completed this kind of flag-to-flag victory of being top the whole season. Doesn't mean they'll be the eventual champions because we're going to go into the playoffs and we need to determine which team will have the right to face them.
Yeah. From a British point of view, that's exactly what doesn't make sense about the playoffs. If you were top from start to bottom to the end of the league, and then you lose that final playoff few games, what's the point of the league kind of thing, right? That's why we call it, it's a marathon, not a sprint, the league system. But I do now see, having lived in Korea for ages, the excitement, because now we've got the playoffs. Still, any of those teams could be champions, right?
Let me tell you about the wildcard series. So first, now, fifth is going to place fourth in the league. And then the winner of that will play third, and the winner of that will play second, and so on. But in this wild card series, right, the team that placed fifth, and that's, Kia Tigers, they're going to play the fourth place team, but the fifth place team, they have to win 2 games, whereas the fourth place team only have to win 1.
That's the advantage.
That's the advantage. Okay. It's not even a straight sort of head-to-head thing, which is really quite interesting.
Well, that's cool, isn't it? Tell us if you're a fan of Korean baseball, because, when there was the lockdown, I think a few baseball games from Korea were shown abroad as well. I wonder if anyone got into it in a big way. We've got lots of North American sports fans, so tell us what you think about Korean baseball as well. Maybe some of the players here. Do you know any of them who are either current or former players?
Welcome to Arirang Radio.
If you are in Jeju,
88.7 in Jeju City,
88.1 in Seogwipo City,
101.9 in the Daejeong area.
Arirang Radio.
We're back for part 2 of Now and Then with David in the studio, talking all about baseball today. Going to do a deep dive. Many of you are big fans, unlike maybe me and David. You've been to a baseball game, though, surely?
I like going to baseball games. They're good fun.
Yeah, you don't really have to concentrate on the sport at all, right? And some of the most expensive seats are in front of the cheerleading gang, where there's one guy with a whistle who's like directing them, and then the cheerleaders behind them. As a football fan, that's very foreign because we don't have that kind of... This is a party event, you know.
No cheerleaders.
You're just watching the footy, right?
Yeah.
In Korea, it's all about the food, the beer, the interaction with other fans. I love that about it. Raul's saying, shout out to my favourite teams in Korea from Argentina. I like the Samsung Lions, the NC Dinos, and the Kia Tigers. It's like a third of the league, isn't it? You're spreading your bets. I used to follow MLB, and I do follow the results, but I can't watch the live games easily in my home country of the KBO. Yeah, I don't think it's too mainstream.
Do kind of sound like K-pop groups in a way, don't they? NC Dinos.
Yes.
I would imagine seeing that on the Melon chart or something. Absolutely. Cherry Russell says, don't watch the games all the way to the end, but rather media clips on YouTube where you can see the funny stuff, the commentary on great plays. Yep, that's a good way to do it. Stacey wishing all the Korean baseball teams good luck. That's Stacey Wiley and Siska Adriani saying baseball's not big in Indonesia, which makes me wonder, Siska, what's the sport in Indonesia?
Yeah, what is the sport? I mean, we had that terrible tragedy at the football game recently, and I remember you have said a couple of times when we've talked about the Premier League, it's pretty big there, football. So I wonder if there's other sports as well. Steve saying there's one Korean player for the San Diego Padres named Kim Ha-sung that is doing well. They're currently in the playoffs. Yeah, we used to have some real massive ones. Ryu Hyun-jin, I think, is still in the MLB, if I'm not mistaken, but he's not pulling up trees quite as much as he was in his younger days. Benny in the Philippines saying we've got baseball only to collegiate level here, but the KBO is available on the S network in the Philippines.
Wow.
So you can watch it. Well, that's good to hear, because I think in this region, Korea is one of the powerhouses, right?
It absolutely is. On the international level and in this region, you know, they do well, Korea. They're a good baseball team. They've got the pedigree.
So what are we going to take a look at next in terms of our baseball adventure?
Before we get into the history, and I'll try to take you through the history, I'd like to introduce one player to you. And this player was a pitcher for the Doosan Bears. He wore the number 30 shirt from 2005 to 2009. His name is Matt Randall from the United States. He's from Washington. And he got to the playoffs twice. No, 3 finals he got to, but never got them across the line. Always did it. During one of the series, his father passed away, and he still kept pitching. Now, the reason I introduced Matt Randall to you is that for about maybe 10, 12 years, I played music with Matt Randall.
Unbelievable.
I'll even show you a picture of me and Matt Randall in our music gear in a minute. And the interesting thing about this gentleman is he was the pitcher for one of the top teams in the country. Yeah. Like, huge. He's on computer games, Wikipedia pages, everything like this. I played music with him for about 2-3 years before he even told me. I had no idea he was like a sports superstar.
That's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. And so from this man, I learned the value of humility. He was a megastar in Korea. He would walk around and baseball fans would scream at him and take photos. But he never used it. He never told me. He was quite happy just to be a humble musician.
That's an interesting personal story you've got there. So hopefully we can show a picture of you in a music band. Is that later on? Or is that after this?
Maybe if the PD does it.
If we've got it, we'll show it for you because I want to see. So he was in your band?
Yeah, but when we were in a band together, he would wear like fishnet stockings and crop tops and mini skirts and things like that, which is a really interesting thing to go from being a professional sports star. I think the producer has found it now. Matt Randall, that superstar baseball player, is on the left with a wig and makeup, and he would dress like that. He got custom-made high heels.
With the highest crop top, it's almost a bikini, isn't it?
Yeah, he used to put his cigarettes in that. There's me on the right with fake tattoos and wigs and things like that. But that was our band. We toured the country playing music like that. And it was
and he did that, and maybe sometimes people didn't recognize him?
Nobody recognized him. But when they did, it was when I started realizing, that this was a person, if you're a sports star, and if
Yeah.
you're a fan of baseball, the impact he had on people was really good.
Well, that's unbelievable. And the Korean League is interesting. Like, there are restrictions on the number of foreign players, and there have been restrictions on which positions you can have as a foreign player, etc., etc. They're trying to open it up more, but the reason they do that is to kind of encourage grassroots domestic baseball, as much as possible. Okay, so on to the history of baseball. When did it even get here? Because now we're so into it. It feels like it's been here for the longest time.
It does. And there were these really interesting conflicting reports I was reading about when baseball appeared. So I'd written this whole script and submitted it to our writers. And it was baseball began in 1905 with Christian missionaries and the YMCA. And then I kept reading and I realized that, no, that wasn't the case, actually. Baseball started, I think there was this desire to have it associated with Christian missionaries. And that seems to be one of the dominant stories, but a little bit more, delving into the records and reading the actual archive material from people. You hear reports of people playing it back in 1894. So there were lots of, that was when foreign people were coming into Korea. And so it dates back to around 1892 to 1894 amongst the foreign community. So in the foreign community in Seoul, they would be playing it there. One of the earliest photos that I can find is from 1920. Now, this is a photo from Horace Underwood's collection. You might know the Underwoods from establishing Yonsei University. Really big. And so this is 1920 baseball in Korea. There it was taking place not in Seoul, but the walled city called Hansong. Very small at the time, but since then, imagine what it's grown to from those early days.
Yeah, and when any sport gets introduced, quote unquote, into a country, at the beginning, the locals are going to be, I guess, on the one hand, quite fascinated and then maybe a bit mystified as well, not knowing what this is.
Absolutely.
And then it just naturally maybe builds up an interest and more people want to play, and that's the kind of organic growth of it. So from back in the 1920s, we've got photographic evidence, but even 30 years almost before that, it was here.
Yes.
So during the Japanese colonial rule, was that a thing that was played, baseball?
Yeah, it was, absolutely. So there were tournaments twice a year. It really started getting... During the Japanese colonization of Korea from 1910 to 1945, things become, for better or for worse, a lot more organized. There's a lot more structure that goes on, and this included in the baseball. Now, it wasn't one continuous, growth. There were restrictions on Korean players towards the end of colonization, which were seen as very unfair. But if I show you one picture from during the colonization period, you will see that you get the establishment of official teams, and here it's not just foreign residents playing baseball. Like you might have the foreign football teams here and the leagues, but now the Koreans were beginning to play baseball. They were beginning to be organized into teams, and that's about 100 years old.
Wow, yeah, all in their uniforms, this black and white photo. If you're not watching the video stream, if you're a baseball fan, that'll send tingles down your spine. That looks so cool, because baseball's huge in Japan as well, right? We can't neglect that fact.
No, that's what they share in the baseball between Korea and Japan. It's really passionate. I mean, they get onto it. If I can, for those that are watching, let's show a couple more old photos from the time I was digging about trying to find some. The next one, you'll find these photos. This is just towards the end of the colonization era, coming towards the Korean wartime.
Wow.
You can even see at the back, can you see the sort of the yangban with the gats on their head? Yeah. But at the same time, you can see people in suits, and look at the old boy standing up to bat there with that look.
Very stiff, doesn't he?
Look on his face. I'm not sure the picture has got the right security safety headgear on, but that's how it was starting. And you can really see just in that photo, the reason I like it for those that are watching is that transition from the old to the new, from the traditional joseon, from the yangban, from the hanbok into the suits, and then into the sports. It's Korea, and you could probably see Korea's modernization through the lens of baseball alone.
Yeah, and that makes it even more sharp, the contrast, right? Yangbans in their old hanboks that don't look out of place in a saguk, a historical drama, and then baseball in the foreground, right?
Look at that.
That is brilliant, that picture. I'm glad we've got some records of this. I'm really curious about, other sports at that time with that timeline. Maybe we could do an episode on that in the future. Like, what was football like at that time and other sports in Korea? Because baseball now is hands down the most popular, like, domestically watched sport. Right?
In terms of attendances in the stadiums as well. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Maybe our listeners or our viewers are looking at another photo here with the YMCA. Just look at these baseball teams. I love looking into the past. And this is where what I want you to try to imagine or picture is that this would have been a completely foreign sport for the people, and yet they embraced it. When you watch things like Squid Game, you have all these traditional Korean games, right, that people on this peninsula would play. Baseball was not one of them. And yet you can see how quickly they've embraced it, how quickly they've taken to it.
Yeah.
And this is not the case in North Korea. You know, North Korea doesn't have a big baseball establishment. They play football, but not baseball. And it's really fascinating to see how quickly the Koreans have taken to this sport. Unlike, for example, Pete, you or me, we've not delved into baseball as much, but it's really become part of the Korean identity.
Yeah, I hope that's what we can do and do on Now and Then, is give you a more nuanced view of Korea. You know, everything is nuanced. It's not just an easy to package into one size fits all. Yeah. And looking at the history of this American sport in Korea, really fascinating today.
Hey! Beat the rhythm! Hey!
The show rocks.
This is Arirang Radio!
We're back for part 3 Now and Then with David in the studio talking about baseball, doing our deep dive. We got some more messages coming in. Sherry saying, when I move to Korea one day, I'm going to be a diehard baseball fan over there. Gotta have my baseball. During the height of the pandemic, we Americans were definitely watching Korean offerings because we were dying for our sports fixes. Well, that's a kind of silver lining, I suppose, of the pandemic, getting the KBO exported a little bit more.
Dying for those fixes. Yeah, you get into it. Kevin Leonard saying that cheerleaders aren't usually found in baseball here, even in the minor leagues. The Montreal Expos had a dance squad in their later years before the team moved to Washington. So I'm taking that Kevin is from Canada.
He's from New England, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we're from Old England.
Yes, we are from original England. But that's interesting. But thinking about it now, I guess from my limited knowledge of North American sports, cheerleaders are big at like American football for sure. I'm pretty certain. But then does that mean they're not at baseball? So Korea has kind of just taken cheerleaders as part of American sports and then just put it into a different sport? Maybe.
There's one thing I want to say about Korean baseball when I'm going to the games and also working amongst other things at a women's university. Lots of Korean women are into baseball and lots of Korean women go to baseball games.
Yes.
It's not sort of a male-dominated sport like you might associate with football in the United Kingdom. But here, it's a real family event, and families will go there, and you'll see groups of women, and, you know, my students are into baseball. Of course, not every woman, but one of the things that I think is really positive about baseball in Korea is that it goes across the demographics. Of course, you have lots of old dudes into baseball and young dudes, but it's not exclusively male at all. It's really, you know, the cheerleaders are there not just for the male gaze, as it were, but it's a female-friendly sport.
Yeah, like they're there, I think, in part to just make the atmosphere a happy kind of active place. And then lots of couples go for a date, actually. That's the first time I went with my, at the time, girlfriend, now wife. And we also went with my cousin and his missus at the time, another game. And the vibe is not testosterone fueled. There's no bad chance or anything like that.
No.
There might be the odd guy who swears because the player has like made a big mistake or something, but it's not like that's really interesting. And the other side, I guess, in the UK, we're seeing, like, because females are getting more into football, there's a lot more female football as well.
Yep.
You don't see a professional female baseball league around the corner in Korea just yet.
But you do see a lot of the commentary on baseball, not the live in-game stuff, but afterwards, the reporting is done by very beautiful young women.
Yes.
So it's not like some old guys talking about the game.
Yeah.
You get, but a lot of it is like done by people that look like weather girls or models almost. They're talking about about the baseball, yeah.
Absolutely. And Sherry just saying baseball as well in the States is definitely family friendly. Father-sons having a game of catch relationship. You do see that in the movies and whatnot. Interesting to hear that's
There
kind
was a
of
very
real.
interesting video from American baseball recently, and it was somebody videoing a guy in the crowd, and he was dipping his hot dog into his beer. I don't know if you saw that.
Is that a thing?
The caption was, "This guy knows something we don't." Everybody was looking at him do it.
Hot dogs in beer.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Let's do a bit more baseball before we run out of time.
Yes.
And so there's a couple of points I want to make, and it's the relationship between sport and politics and also business in South Korea. Now, this is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the way the things evolved. As I'm talking about this, like our producer does have one photo. Let's get into this one, this sports, sex and screen. Now, this was a policy from the Chun-doo-hwan government. So you're looking from 1980 to 1988.
Okay.
This is as baseball becomes professional in Korea. And it was a specific policy of the government to try to get the citizens on side.
Okay.
The citizens didn't necessarily want to be ruled by a military general. They wanted democracy. They wanted freedom. They wanted to be able to express themselves. One of the policies that the government did said, well, I tell you what, and this goes back to the old Roman Empire idea of bread and circuses. Give the people bread, give them circuses, and they won't do anything.
They'll be all right.
They'll be all right. So the government enacted sports, sex, and screen. And one of these sports was baseball. We'll give them baseball. We'll give them movies that are a little bit more, risque, got a little bit more romance, and we'll give them these things. And it was this liberalization of the society, which was intentional.
Oh, that's so interesting. And sports was part of this 3 S's. And yet, I'm sure we have some baseball movies from modern times which focus on some real big rivalries during the 80s.
Yeah.
Maybe there was like this kind of concerted effort to present it in this really exciting way to keep the masses like under control.
Absolutely. Let me just continue with this. I'm going to go to photo number 7. And this is the first ever pitch thrown in a baseball professional game in South Korea. This is 1982.
Yeah.
There's 30,000 fans in Seoul Stadium, and the president at the time, Chun Doo-won, throws the first pitch. Now, that's the first ever pitch thrown by the president as part of this policy. I will tell listeners that now we've had virtual influencers, like digital computer creations, not real people, throw the first pitches at Korean baseball games.
Wow.
Now, just ask yourself, how does that actually work? But that's happened.
Who throws the actual ball? We have such an eclectic mix of people throwing the first pitch. We don't have an equivalent, I believe, in football. Like, you can't take the kickoff instead of the pro players,
No,
right?
You get tackled.
And so I was really intrigued by this. Sometimes they'll have just random girl group celebrities, boy group celebrities, even people like kids who have been sick with illnesses.
Yeah.
If they make a recovery and they make the headlines, they'll come and do the first pitch. But the first ever was done by a military dictator. That's interesting.
By the president at the time, yeah.
Wow.
I like it when the K-pop stars, they'll do flips and the girls will flip over and throw it and things like that. There's one thing that we need to understand, which is where we're from with football. Teams are based on their geographic locations.
Yes.
So we'll have Liverpool and Manchester and Everton and Nottingham and such forth. In Korea, it's a little bit different in that the teams are corporate owned. And so you have, the Samsung Lions, the Lotte Giants, the Doosan Bears. And part of Korean baseball is that each team will be owned by a corporate behemoth, a conglomerate, a chaebol, and they will also take part of a geographic location. So when the league started in 1982, you had MBC as one. They were based in Seoul, Doosan in Daejeon, Lotte in Busan, Samsung in Daegu, for example.
Yeah, so they are kind of loosely anchored to a geographical place, but in the name that we call them by, we just use the company name and then their nickname, right? Like Doosan Bears. At the time when I first kind of got into it through my cousin coming to Korea, it was OB Bears at the time.
That's correct, the first champions.
Yeah, and if you look at these signs, if you can't read Hangul, that's what it says. It says the location on the top, like Busan, and then Lotte Giants on the bottom there.
Yeah.
And I guess this must kind of be influenced from America because their franchises sometimes move cities, right, depending on who's investing in them. But we don't call them like the corporate name and then the team. Like they're usually like the New York Giants or whatever.
This is what I want to try to get across. Imagine that you supported like the Google Tomahawks or like the Apple dinosaurs. I'm sorry for saying product names, but I'm not advertising. But you understand that.
Yes, it's a bit too direct, it feels, right? In the West, maybe.
Yeah, and this extends across it, because of the input of the businesses into their things and the relationship between it. One of the big South Korean players retired this season, Lee Dae-ho, and he was from the Lotte Giants, and the Lotte chairman, Shin Dong-bin, comes down to give him his award. So there's, it's really tied in with these huge companies. So as it starts, there's politics and there's government. And I think that's not been detrimental because look at how big baseball is today.
Yeah, right. They kind of work. And I guess, in even the UK now, we're seeing lots of investment from certain maybe shady characters or shady parts of the world.
No.
And we kind of just pretend like it's not happening almost. Whereas in Korea, it's just in your face. Like, this team is here because of the support from this company,
Yeah.
And you are shouting out this company's name when you're sometimes cheering on these teams. So they're not making any bones about it. And I think a lot of the time, if these conglomerates weren't supporting the teams, they would struggle, to have a team in certain cases. So in that kind of way, it's almost like a thing for the community. They're like investing in a way. Yeah, that's really interesting. In terms of baseball here, is it like the States where, high school or sometimes college sports can be, in a way, more popular than the professional sports?
There has been talk of that. Certainly, I think now the professional baseball is dominating, but there were times sort of as it was developing that the high school teams were watched so much and there were all of these tournaments. And as I was doing the research, they said that there was so much electrical demand that these high school games would cause blowouts on the country's infrastructure.
What?
Because people were really into it. There's another point to make that not only high school, but I just want to address that during the 1980s, as Korea was trying to get to democracy and develop itself, there was an element among some aspects of Korea that saw baseball as cultural imperialism. And it sort of developed this anti-American feeling.
Yeah.
It's not too big anymore, certainly not, but it was there at the time that it was, maybe that's why it's not in North Korea. It was seen as this sort of Western influence taking over the domestic traditional cultural heritage.
That's an interesting take to it. And before we finish up today, just to make clear how much more popular like baseball is in terms of attendance, it completely dwarfs anything else, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I want to try to show you a picture of the Gochok Sky Dome to show you what a local baseball stadium can look like, because it's like something out of the future. That's where you go and watch baseball in South Korea.
I've driven past that a few times. I went there for the U2 concert as well. It is amazing, like fully indoor, so you don't need to worry about the rain or anything. The number of people going to baseball games is like 4 times that of K-League football.
Yep. So in terms of domestic, going to watch the game, if you're going to do something in Seoul, you will go and watch a baseball game. Of course, lots of people watch Premier League football and football from around the world, but people in Korea, they love their baseball. They love going to the stadium, and it's you can see it through the development of this country, just what it's done from those early beginnings.
Yeah, that's unbelievable in this relatively short space of time. David, thanks for coming in. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next Monday.
See you next Monday, everybody.
You can listen to Monday's segment Now and Then with David Tizard every Monday from 10 a.m. KST on #DailyK.